Hey everyone. So originally I was going to do a really long intro for this video filled with lore and cool Warhammer historical detail, and to be honest, quite frankly, Necrosphinxes are really cool and I really wanted to paint one. So let's get into it. For models this size, sub-assemblies are key, allowing you to paint places that will be hard to reach when the model is fully assembled. I made the mistake of gluing the first wing to the body before remembering this, so follow my words and not my actions, and put together the body, but leave the wings, arms and head separate for now. As such a large part of the Necrosphinx is gold, we're going to make our lives easier by base coating the whole model with Retributor armour spray to start. With that done, the gold is all base coated, but we're actually going to start painting the stone skin first, as it's a lower layer than the gold armour, and it's always best to paint from the innermost layer out to prevent you getting paint on bits you've already finished. So we're going to start by painting all of the skin with Incubi darkness. It's a bit tedious but necessary, so grab a big brush, thin your paint and cover all over. As you can see here, it's going to need more than one coat for a smooth, even finish, but just be patient and wait for each layer to dry before applying the next. Get it into all the nooks and crannies and try as hard as you can not to get this over the gold, but a few spills are inevitable and can be easily touched up later. Also, don't forget to paint things like the arms and head that are currently separate. You can see here what a difference a second coat of Incubi darkness makes to the finish. With that done, we're then going to shade the skin with an all-over wash of Coelia greenshade. That's darkened the skin nicely and we can now begin to highlight the stone up. Because this is such a big model, I'm going to show you this with an arm only so I can get closer to camera, but the same steps will be done all over the body. We're first going to return to Incubi darkness and paint this back over the skin, leaving only the recesses shaded. With a 50-50 mix of Incubi darkness and Sons of Horus green, we're going to start defining the raised areas. You can see that this coat is quite thin, basically a glaze consistency, which will give us a slight transparency and so a smoother transition over especially the flatter areas. With pure Sons of Horus green, we're going to do the same thing but covering a smaller area, leaving some of the previous layer showing. This is primarily an edge highlight. And then, with a mix of 3 parts Sons of Horus green to 1 part Gauss Blaster green, selectively highlight the most prominent points, things like the knuckles, the highest edges of any joints. With an equal mix of both paints, we're then going to very quickly finish by just dotting the very most extreme areas on the face, and that's it. Apart from these few points to draw the attention, we want the actual marble stone to be quite dark, as we'll now be painting some brighter veins over it. You can see here how the skin looks now I've painted these steps over the whole model. For the marble veins, we're going to heavily thin down a mix of equal parts Sons of Horus green and Gauss Blaster green, and begin to draw the veins where we want them to be. You can see because of the dilution it's quite transparent and chalky, but that's exactly what we want. Because whilst this is wet, you can take a damp, clean brush and just feather out the edges slightly, helping them blend into the stone a little more. Then, with pure Gauss Blaster green, we're going to trace thinner lines within those veins we just sketched out. Finally, to give some depth to the veins, we can selectively paint Incubi darkness under some of the lines, adding further shade and variation. And with that done, our marble skin is complete. The next largest area is the metal. Start by touching back up any areas of the gold that you got green on with Retributor armour. Now, for the metal areas, we're actually going to paint these in two different colours. A warm gold for the armour, and for the blades and wing feathers, a more corroded pale copper. You can see here on this arm that I've already painted up as a test the two different finishes. We'll start with the gold, for which we're going to wash this all over with Guilliman flesh contrast paint. Things like the leg guards, chest armour, arms, but also the cartouches across the body. No need to thin this down, just apply a good coat all over the gold. Once dry, that's really added some depth and warmth and knocked back the brightness. To define further, take Fyreslayer flesh, and we're going to selectively paint this into the deepest recesses, around any studs and into any panel lines. With that done, we have some wonderful depth to our gold. But to bring back some of the shine, we're going to layer Retributor armour back over the flatter areas. Next, with Liberator gold, we're going to edge highlight all of the gold areas and pick out the tops of things like the skulls and other details. This is again a bit of a tedious step, but it's really going to make the gold shine. And finally, with Stormhost Silver, we're going to pick out the most prominent points and fine edge highlights. Don't go overboard with this, as we don't want the final finish to be too silver, but this will really make the sharp edges of the gold pop. We can also use Stormhost Silver to place some scratches indicating wear in battle. And there we are, the gold is done and looks amazing. We can now turn our attention to the copper areas, which we're going to base coat with Canoptek alloy. We want these to look like ancient verdigris copper, contrasting with the warm, shiny gold. So, over these areas we're going to wash Coelia greenshade thinned with equal parts Lamy and medium. This will tint the metal a nice green shade and darken it down. Don't forget to apply this to the wing feathers and other scaled areas also. To emphasise the verdigris even further, we're going to take Nilakh oxide and, similar to panel lining, paint this carefully into the deepest recesses and between any individual feathers. Finally, edge highlight the copper with Stormhost Silver and paint scratches similar to the gold. If you're enjoying this video at this point, please do like and subscribe, it really makes a difference. And there we are, both metals finished and our model is nearing completion. We're now going to paint the many bones and wraps adorning the model, and embedded into things like the armour, as well as painting the tail. Begin by base coating all of these areas with Wraithbone. For the tail especially, this will require multiple coats. Wash all of the bone areas with Skeleton Horde. And then for any bandages and wrappings, wash these with Aggaros Dunes contrast paint. For the bones, we're going to highlight these back up with Wraithbone, leaving Skeleton Horde shading in the recesses. pick out smaller highlights with Pallid Witch Flesh. And then spot highlight the most prominent points with White Scar. For the wrappings, pick out the individual bands with Flayed One Flesh, and then again spot highlight the most prominent parts with White Scar. I'm just going to focus on the tail here for a moment, as it's a larger area of bone, so it's worth spending a bit more time on. I've shaded it with Skeleton Horde, and re-established the Wraith bone like with the smaller bones, but I'm going to do some intermediary steps for the highlighting. First, an equal parts mix of Wraith bone and Pallid Witch Flesh, leaving a little of the Wraith bone showing. Then, thick edge highlights with pure Pallid Witch Flesh, thinner edge highlights with a 1-to-1 mix of Pallid Witch Flesh and White Scar, and then finally spot highlights with pure White Scar. And with that, our bone is finished. Before moving on, we're going to finish off the body by painting the venom on the tail with Tesseract Glow to give the vial a poisonous yellow-green tint. At this point, our model is nearly finished. There's just one significant area left, and it is significant, as you can see I've already painted on this side, the gems. There's no way around this, there are a lot. But that distinctive turquoise and red pairing adds not only some much needed colour, but really emphasises the ancient Egyptian feel of the Necrosphinx. As I say, there's not only a lot of these though, but a lot of them are really small, so buckle in. I'm going to focus in on an arm again here, just to show the process. Begin by painting all of the gem areas with Cantor Blue, both the rows of embedded gems, but also things like scarabs. Then, pick out alternating gems with Sotek Green, and also paint the scarab bodies and wings, leaving the recesses shaded. Begin to highlight the scarabs with a 1-to-1 mixture of Sotek Green and Ahriman Blue, focusing towards the upper areas where the light shines. Edge highlight everything with pure Ahriman Blue. With a 50-50 mix of Ahriman blue and blue horror, highlight the topmost edges of the scarabs. And then with pure blue horror, spot highlight all the blue areas. Base coat the red gems with Khorne red. Then with Evil Sunz Scarlet, paint the gems, leaving a little bit of Khorne red visible at the bottom. Edge highlight the red gems with Trollslayer orange. And then spot highlight with a 1-to-1 mix of Trollslayer orange and Flash Gitz yellow. And we're done! For the larger gems across the body, I've done the same thing but with some more intermediate mixes for a smoother transition, but the basic process is exactly the same. Only one thing left to paint now, the claws. Over an Incubi Darkness base coat, paint thick striations in Dawnstone. Then, paint thinner lines with Ulthuan Grey in the middle of the Dawnstone, focusing more towards the tips. And finally spot highlight with White Scar. Off camera, I finished assembling the model, and you can see the finished beast. It's such an amazing piece. I'm basing it in the same scheme as the rest of my Tomb Kings, which is with a sandy texture. I'm using Green Stuff World products here, but any sand texture paint will work. Slop it on thickly and be careful not to get any on the model itself. Give that a good few hours to dry, and then wash the base with Seraphim sepia. And finally dry brush with White Scar. And there we are, the finished Necrosphinx. This really is one of my favourite models in the whole Tomb Kings range. It's so over the top and dramatic. This was actually my first time painting a larger model on camera, so Please do leave me a comment below if there was anything you particularly enjoyed about this format, or anything you think I could change for next time. And in fact, leave me a comment below if there's anything you'd like to see me paint next time as well. In any case, I hope you found this video useful. A lot of the techniques I've used here are applicable, obviously not just across the Tomb Kings range, but also a lot of the other Warhammer ranges and races as well. So I hope there was something in it for you, and I hope to see you next time. But until then, happy painting.